There are two things on the agenda. What does it say here?
Recording is on.
Okay.
Presentation update. I'm just reading from what's on the monthly meetup page on the wiki. Yeah, so Dion is hopefully going to present Blender BIM when he gets up or gets online. Or is that him laughing now?
No, it was me, Lucas.
No.
But hopefully he didn't miss the day. He's not
Who knows? He hasn't.
About tomorrow.
He hasn't replied on the. He hasn't replied on the IRC chat. Yeah, and the other thing was
his phone number. If you like, I could give him a bell.
Yeah, give him a call, though. That'd be good.
Okay.
Just to check he's not slowly eating his breakfast. And I mentioned that I'd quite like to have a little chat about the wiki part of the website, just to get some ideas of how we want to organize it and what we want to have on it. But that discussion, maybe we can talk about how many people are interested in that discussion, because I think a lot of people might be interested in hearing other things. And if Dion's not going to make it today, maybe you guys want to talk about what you're interested in hearing about. So you're all familiar names, except one who hasn't put their name on. Has anybody been doing anything interesting they want to talk about for 10 minutes?
I did a little bit of modeling of garden changes over time, just to sort of see light simulations and sight lines and things like that. Seems like an interesting area for potential development in the future because, it could be, I'm sure a lot of the data that's required has already been modeled and is actually available in open formats. I know, for instance, the Australian government has a fantastic resource about almost every plant occurring, and they'll talk about, the speed of growth as well as the sizes and so forth. So for longer term projects, I think that's an area that could potentially have some further development in the future. Just a very early stage set of ideas at the moment.
Yeah, I'm just going to write down here. So I've started. Sorry, I'm not very good at doing more than one thing at a time. Just started a post on the forum, writing down some notes of what we talk about. I've just added there brainstorm because one of the things I think would be good is just to have a spot on the wiki where people can just throw ideas like that in, so where other people can discover it. I have been doing the usual Revit work on a big dairy product at the moment, which is pretty boring. What about the other guys, other people? Have any of you been diving into some interesting open source work?
I wouldn't mind introducing myself. This is the first time I've actually joined one of your guys' meetings, so I was just kind of sitting in to kind of see how the whole flow went. But can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you fine, Andrew.
Okay. Yes, my name is Andrew Peel. I primarily work with Blender, developing add-ons and custom versions of it. A lot of my work has been in the cabinet space. So I develop intuitive tools for people to be able to lay out kitchens and baths and closets. And so I've been working on the asset management tool in Blender to be able to basically load parametric assets and things like that. The primary focus right now is in an add-on called Home Builder, which will just basically automate the process of designing those spaces in your home for kitchens, baths, and closets. So that's pretty much what I do.
Cool.
Also,
You've been making, I'm not sure what phrase you use, but are you using the, what's it called, application templates system in Blender 2.8?
Yeah, that was kind of my first go, just to be able to try to create custom templates kind of focused on that workflow. I haven't really done too much with it since kind of like the first couple articles and videos that I put out about that. I've been primarily just making custom builds of Blender while the asset management tool is being kind of finalized. So I'm hoping to basically use the vanilla version of Blender with just a library that can be installed with all of the cabinetry and walls and different things that are needed to design those spaces.
Okay.
I actually had a discussion with somebody yesterday who has a factory in China doing CNC wood parts specifically for cabinet making, because I just mentioned to him, the project that I had going on, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting. I've got all the equipment for that. I do that professionally." So I work separately in metals. So could you just clarify? Are you generating parts that would then be fabricated in order to achieve an outcome, or is it more along the lines of using predefined commercially mass-produced products and then figuring out how they could be arranged? So is it essentially specifying custom cabinetry, or is it using existing products?
Yeah, so the end goal is to allow custom cabinetry. I started this project a long time ago with a company called Microvellum, and they are Autodesk based, but I was developing a tool in Blender that connected to their manufacturing system. And so we were able to design, the rooms, and then we would send the part list over to them to generate all the CNC code. And so my goal with this project now is to generate that all within Blender and Python to generate the parts list, the machining information, and then have post-processors that can connect to different CNC machinery to do all of the drilling and routing and things like that.
Oh, that sounds great. I'll send you an email outside of this meeting and maybe put you in touch with this guy directly, because I think we could discuss that a little bit further.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting for sure.
Hello, I'm Peter. I just wanted to comment a bit on what Jan called Asta. How do you pronounce your name, by the way? Ioannis?
Ioannis.
Ioannis. I'm originally a mechanical engineer. Been working with CAD since actually 81. Says something about my age, but never mind. In my experience, what we've generally found, even up to this day, is basically what you were saying about applying finite element for buildings. In nearly all disciplines, I found that when you want to do finite elements, you have to remodel it. So my question is really, is this mainly because the ones designing don't know the requirements for using the models for finite elements? As I take it, in the IFC format, there's basically nothing stopping us from modeling it so it was ready for finite elements. But maybe nobody knows how.
There are some issues in general. I mean, let's say in the IFC format, let's say you model in 3D, but typically if you want to do then a finite element model, you have to do what we call the analytical model, let's say. So, yes. So this is, let's say, one of the challenges is to, if you don't want, so if you have a reference of a 3D model and you want to define the analytical model, either you have to do it manually or you have to create, let's say, some algorithms that will give you, let's say, the analytical model.
But my question is really, if you look at a general BIM model you get, it would be, I would say, very sparse when it comes to detail and also anything relating to structural, what can I say?
Engineering.
I'm not in English. Yeah. So my question is there a way we could guide people when designing? Say, if you've got a wall is generally modeled as a solid, and the rest of the wall is purely description, correct? In general.
Yes.
So then my point is really, if even though you model it this way, you know when you're modeling it, you know what you're modeling, and breaking it down into a section of a wall, you would have basically what's needed for input to a finite element. Is that a bad assumption? Or
I think half bad.
I'm just searching for ways to how could we make the transition from an IFC model to something usable for finite elements easier.
Yeah, the thing, let's say, is that first of all, maybe you don't have all the information, let's say. So I can have, let's say, a wall, and maybe there is also a material assigned, and this could be okay. And then you have a beam that is connected to this wall that has a material, and maybe even a section, although it has the geometry already, let's say, draw. But the thing is then that you need, let's say, the engineer to put more information. So what are the material properties, and what is the connection of the beam to the wall, because there can be different kind of connections. So there are, let's say, information that it is not possible, let's say, to be defined also in the IFC, in the schema, let's say, of the 3D elements. And then it is also a matter of who is creating this IFC. If he's not an engineer, let's say, he will not be able to, let's say, know all this information. And for that thing, I mean, the structural analysis schema inside IFC, let's say, tackles these issues, or has let's say, the variables for this information that will have then to be, let's say, defined by an engineer. But yeah, so there is a way, let's say, to go forward, and from in my perspective, let's say, what I see as the plan is to be able, let's say, to, if we assume that we have a structural model with an analytical geometry, how we can, let's say, create something automatized that has already all the information to run in Codaster, and then at the second stage, how we can define this analytical geometry from a 3D geometry. Even let's say, to have some steps, and maybe then you will need some modifications, let's say, but maybe to have the basic, let's say, stuff already drawn. So this would be, let's say, the perspective.
Okay, just my thought was just maybe there was some starting point that would make the transition easier.
Yes, yes. Any other topics that we want to discuss?
But this simulation stuff is general for IFC, I believe. I mean, this is a mechanical, static simulation. The other ones who's doing lightning simulation needs these parameters and starting conditions. The one who wants to make electricity will have this information. You always have, for a simulation, need to have this starting point for the mesh, or for the finite elements. So I don't know how IFC will handle all of these different physical categories. Is it already discussed, or is it already fixed?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have so much experience on other types of, let's say, simulations, but I think that the common thing is that to do, let's say, simulations, probably you need some, let's say, processing of the geometry, of the 3D geometry, to have something, let's say, for your analysis. I don't know, for example, for energy analysis, I see a lot, let's say, again, the spaces, I don't know, they use IFC space, for example, to define, let's say, the various spaces of a building, which is another, let's say, geometry is not based, it's not the 3D geometry essentially. So yeah, there is always, let's say, a step to obtain the geometry that is applicable for your type of analysis.
Hey guys, I think we had two things on the agenda. One of them was Dion talking about Blender BIM. The other one was the website. I think we'll assume that Dion's not coming unless he suddenly turns up. And the website doesn't need to be a long discussion. So I've got one other thing I'd like to suggest we put on the agenda. And I think maybe we should just hear what other topics people have and see if we can agree on an agenda and go ahead. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure, I agree.
Yeah. So apart from talking about the website, one thing I'd like to talk a little bit about, if we've got time, is just vaguely about organizational issues. There's been a little bit of discussion about how we want to organize ourselves and what do we need to do to help people send money the right places, and how do we want to be able to influence things. Are there some other topics that people think would be interesting to talk about a little bit today? Now that we've got a bit of an open agenda.
Hi there. I could show you some. This is Bruno. I could show you some. I've been doing all sorts of things, but I've been doing some work with Blender SphereChalk, the SphereChalk plugin. I wonder if anyone would be interested in seeing that.
And SphereChalk, that's a what does it do?
It's a bit like is it Grasshopper? No, or
right, Grasshopper Dynamo kind of.
Grasshopper Dynamo things.
Yeah.
I think it would be very interesting, Bruno.
Yeah.
I think it would be very interesting.
How long do you think would be good for that, Bruno?
I'll show you. It'll take me about 2 minutes.
Okay, well then I think we should do that at some stage.
Okay.
Are there other points people think could be interesting? Well, I think we should start with that. That sounds like it gives some nice pictures. Do you want to go ahead, or should we just talk about something else for a little while? And then tell us when you're ready.
Right, so I'll show you. Start with how do I share a screen? There we go.
Just click on some things and see what happens. It's the
go.
one that looks like a computer screen.
Got thousands of windows open.
It should be on the lower left. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we can see.
Can you see a screen? Yeah. So this is a sculpture that I built. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yep. This is a sculpture that I built 2008, and it was 34 meters high. And it was a temporary piece, and it had all these These are full-size Land Rovers on the sculpture. Well, then let's open the big one. There we go. So the way I did this is I modeled a mesh in Blender, and then I wrote all these scripts to slice it up. With the complication being that I wanted to use just a small number of cut angles. So there's only five cut angles in the whole job. So just recently I had a client who asked for another one of these, but they're not going to have it now. So I can show you it. Oh, there we go.
It's really impressive, Bruno.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So this is so here we have a mesh at the top. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. And here's the slice model at the bottom. which is all drawn as just as I-beams at the minute. And here's the OSArch node tree, which is huge. So it's taking three orthogonal grids, and it's slicing the mesh on the 3 grids. So I can so you should be able to see if I change the number of vertices in the grid, you should see that the model's changing in real time. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Change the grid size. And but the more interesting thing is that I can model it like this. So using the Blender tools here, and then I can update the mesh at the bottom. So if I want to pull it in this direction here, mess around with it a bit, and then I do an update, it changes the final piece.
So basically, this means that OSArch is also getting information, and it's not only, let's say, it's these 2 directions, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you can use a mesh as a source geometry for the manipulation. I mean, this is a pretty dumb shape at the minute, but there you go. So obviously, there's no analysis happened on this model at all. But this is the kind of thing you can do in OSArch. And when I did this 12 years ago, it took me like a whole week to go from a mesh to a usable 3D model. And now it takes like a second.
Is it calculating some physical properties?
No,
Like
not
stability.
No, I'd export it as a line model and then do some analysis on it.
Is exporting in line mode, is it straightforward to export the lines?
Yeah. It was hard to model it as I sections, but it would be much easier to do it as lines, and then I could export the lines as DXF and then import that into analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I've got to show. I've got some other things I've been doing, but I don't have anything that's showable.
Cool. Hey, Bruno, you just mentioned exporting that to DXF.
Yeah.
And we've discussed a little bit because none of us were quite sure if DXF can handle 3 dimensions.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But, no, I've been doing DXF in 3D for a long time.
Okay. Some people were saying
it's very basic. You can do points, point clouds, lines, faces, and meshes, but you can't. But solid modeling now, no chance. Doesn't really work.
Okay. There's a DXF page on the wiki, so if you've got a cool looking file that shows what DXF can be used for, because people have this idea that DXF is the poor cousin of DWG.
Well, I mean, with the latest version of AutoCAD, if you save any model as DXF and then load it, it round trips perfectly. But a lot of that data is in a binary blob that nobody knows how to read.
Okay. So that's cheating, yeah. But
so
if you've got if you've got a good looking DXF that is only DXF data that is a cool picture and people can download and play with, I think that'd be great to show people.
I mean, another thing that I've recently discovered is the DXF support in Blender is like crippleware. So they've actually removed features. But if you want to have the full DXF import and export, you have to buy a paid-for plugin, which isn't great.
Yeah, actually, because we also had a discussion on this. By the way, I'm also using, let's say, for years now, DXF for 3D geometry, but only, let's say, I use it with lines and 3D polylines, for example, something like that. So I'm using polylines to represent faces that are planar faces. But the thing that was mentioned was that in Blender there is the DXF is based on DXF Grabber, and this is an old project, and the same author after DXF Grabber made the EasyDXF, that is another, let's say, Python project, and essentially the solution would be to, let's say, to use EasyDXF for the input-output with Blender. So that would be, let's say, an upgrade.
Yeah. I'd actually, I'd really like to have a decent way of getting meshes out, simply, easily readable meshes out of Blender, but I haven't got that.
But I think as well, I've read that some people have been able to switch EasyDXF into Blender instead of the one that's there now, or maybe I'm confusing it with a discussion on FreeCAD. But yeah, I think after the integration with the Open Design Alliance's libraries for exporting DXF and DVGs, then the developers might have got a bit lazy, because the functionality is there for the people who are willing to pay for it. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's see, organization and website. I think we'll start with organization, if that's all right. So there's been a little bit of, I think Baswin started a bit of a discussion. And we've talked a little bit about organizational questions, like do we want to be in a legal entity in some way? There's quite a few arguments as to why that would be useful. The most obvious one is you could start being able to say things as a group, and we could apply for funding for projects as a group and things like that. How important that is a discussion that we might need, because there are other ways of doing that as well. But I think there were sort of those two aspects in it. One of them was about being able to have a voice, because at the moment, it's not really fair to say that OSArch has some opinion or other, because we don't really have a way of agreeing on what we think about things. I haven't got back to writing the mission statement that I started for a while. Once we sort of agreed on what it should contain, it seemed less important, because we'd agreed on what it we'd agreed on it, so I just didn't get around to writing it. But especially in terms of funding, the argument is, and I tend to agree, the argument is that being an organization with a legal status, and being able to say, for the next 12 months, we're supporting these features in these projects, or whatever it is, it gives someone for universities to ring, and they know who they're talking to, and it means that people can advertise their membership, whatever the membership means. That's just some of the discussions we've had. I'm not sure how many people think this kind of discussion is like, I know that doing the work in the background is boring. Lots of people don't want to do that, but I think it's really important that we think about whether we want to, how much we want to become sort of a formal organization, and what that might look like. So what sort of thoughts have people had about that?
Are you seeing yourself becoming like a non-profit organization?
Can you turn up your volume?
Increase my volume?
Yep, that sounds better.
Sorry. So I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. I'm João Queiroz Lima. I'm Portuguese, and I've been taking a look on the forum lately to see what this project is all about. So I'm hearing the meeting without a clear purpose. For me, it's like an end user purpose, but there's no end users right now. So it's a bit strange for me discussing these things with you. But I was asking if you guys want to turn yourselves into a non-profit or something like that would work on this field.
Yeah, that's kind of the discussion, whether that's something we'd want to do. I mean, it's the sort of thing that I think would be a good idea.
But it's an international community, so it's probably hard for that organization to be done. Well, I'm an architect, and I know some architects working collaboratively in international organizations. Some of them on Architecture for Humanity, and maybe I can talk to them and see how that kind of stuff can get organized. Though I didn't have an interest on that until now. Maybe some clues on how something like that can be done would be nice to have, no?
Sure. Just to talk about what I think most of us probably agree we are. There is Ryan has got what's it called, Opening Design, which is an architecture office, and I know that Yorick also has an architecture office, and they sometimes work together. But OSArch in itself is a project about supporting the development of software. So I don't. Yeah, is that what you were thinking it is?
I don't know
Okay.
because I have an office myself, and I have some associates of that office. But we have a commercial office, so it's each one of us is a partner. So we all share a part of the company. I don't know how a free non-profit would get organized like that. But for an organization, it has to have funding too. So it's like you don't know where to start from funding without an organization. Maybe it's impossible. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to. This at the same time, this feels like a one-person organization sometimes, because it's like one developer, but I don't understand exactly how this is organized exactly. So maybe for people funding it, it will be strange too, no?
To be honest, I for now, let's say, I don't know. I have the feeling that it's a bit early. I see it more, let's say, as a community that, let's say, is discussing it together for development of software. And for now, I don't know. I see more, let's say, in the center, maybe the individual projects, let's say, that that are developed by, let's say, the members. But I don't know. This is a little bit my thought, but I'm not very strong, let's say, in either, let's say, side. I don't know. That is my thought.
Who else has some thoughts about that? I think Ernest, yours comment about how active Dion is and what's happening with Blender BIM, that's quite fair as well. That his work is getting a lot of recognition, and that's quite appropriate. But it also means that some of the contact that's happening is going directly to Dion, but he's sort of a bit. He can only really talk about his own project. So that's, and like, yeah.
Well, Dion's volunteered to sort of help with a project that I've got going on to do a renovation at the moment, which he posted some pictures to the forum. I think the objective for me in getting involved with providing data and so forth is that I'm actually going to build something which costs a lot of money, obviously, but based on the output of not just Blender BIM, but other open source software and methods. So the idea was that maybe that could be some kind of a showcase which would allow, more people to get involved, because, I've been following the community for a while here, but it just wasn't possible as an end user, as somebody pointed out earlier, to sort of get where you needed to go to finalize, you know, documentation requirements, so forth, that are legal. You know, there's hard requirements. And so not coming from the industry, I know a lot of you are architectural professionals. I'm software background myself, but I actually do metals fabrication and robotics as a job now. It's very interesting to see, you know, the breadth of interest, but I think forming a formal organization at the moment might be a little bit hamstrung by the fact that we are quite a diverse group, and also that a lot of the discussion that's happening already, for example, regarding rendering standards in different countries perhaps being different when indicating, you know, demolition or whatever it might be. These are things that would be great for people to volunteer, maybe in like local interest groups, like in some of the other organizations I'm a member of. You know, that you have sort of little interest groups that might spawn for one particular field that is covered by the overall organization. So the benefit there is that, you know, there's more scope for special interest discussion, and that can be as formal as required in each case, whereas it doesn't sort of burn on everyone else's time. Like, I think there's a lot of people that are just sort of casual interest, and they don't want to be spending a lot of time discussing organizational objectives and things like that. In fact, for those sorts of things, I believe personally that it might just be more efficient to leave it on, you know, like standard post style forum approach rather than real time, because it is the sort of thing that is more suited to a very long, you know, reply, a considered reply, a formal reply. I think real time stuff is sort of good for gauging, you know, feedback to, you know, screen shares and things like that, but might not be the right forum for that sort of discussion. That's just my personal opinion. So, yeah, that's all I can contribute.
Yeah, I think part of the reason for the talk about organization is particularly because people have started contacting Dion and asking for ways to help. And one of the things that he's talked about, and you can read that in his application to Epic Games, is that it's not because Blender BIM necessarily needs a whole lot of hours or a whole lot of money. It's a project he enjoys doing and he's going to keep doing, and it doesn't really need big funding. But there are lots of projects that all need to that would all benefit from some help and some coordination and stuff like that, and just trying to work out, well, okay, how do we find out which projects, because we've made this long list of open source software that's relevant for AEC, but a lot of those projects probably don't know about the other projects. And if someone contacts Dion, or go on the website and find someone else's contact details, it's kind of a question, well, is it just a website with a whole lot of stuff? Is it just a wiki and a discussion? Or do we want to actually try and coordinate different projects? And when I say coordinate, I just mean helping them get in touch. Because we can't do the coordination for them, but helping them find each other and helping to be a space where different software projects can come together and say, well, okay, if we work on this and you work on that, then we've improved the workflow. Instead of each package, like this, there's a lot of great stuff like what you're doing, Aaronus, which is taking data from FreeCAD and Blender, for example, and Blender and FreeCAD talking to each other, and a whole lot of work with like getting drawings over to Inkscape and all those sorts of things, and finding a good way to help coordinate that. I don't know what the best way of doing that is. It's just a need that I think is there, because at the moment we haven't really been able to. I haven't really been able to find in my work for the website a solid workflow. A solid workflow which uses lots of these different tools, where you can say, here is the best bet at the moment of how to do it, and here are the aspects that deserve some focus. So if you've got time, or you've got money, or you've got influential friends, these might be some places to focus. So that's kind of the background for that discussion, how to focus things where we're all going to get the most out of it.
I personally agree, let's say, with this intention of maybe coordinating and having, let's say, a better idea, let's say, of what features we need for what software. But I mean, this can also start, let's say, happening even if there is no organization. I mean, what is then the real need, let's say, for the organization right now, in your view, let's say?
Well, the sort of examples that I thought about, like one of the things that's really interesting in these monthly meetings is just hearing what's happening, what development is going on in different projects that I really haven't thought about. What's happening in the finite element modeling software at the moment in the open source world, and what's happening with the whole documentation discussion, DXF, SVG, inside the programs, outside the programs, same workflow, different workflow. So a lot of it is what's happening on the forums. I can hear that what I'm talking about now is some sort of newsletter or something, but just sort of sharing the information with more people than just the developers of the projects that are involved. So helping people find each other and talk to each other. And that's where I thought, like, one idea I had was, if we and those of us who are interested at the moment, if we finalize this mission statement that I started working on, and it got quite long, and then someone came with a short version which is really good, and then someone came with a completely different version which is also very good. You know, we could take that and we could ask different projects, do you agree with this? Do you want to back up on this? Would you like to put the name of your project on the list of projects who support this effort? Because at the moment, like, I don't know about you guys, but as far as I know, we're not really doing any outreach. Like, we're not actively going out and contacting different projects. And if we had our own channels on Twitter, or even just our own handle on Twitter, our own hashtags and things like that, just to focus the information. Like, I see several people on LinkedIn posting really interesting things, but they're not connected to each other in any way. So it's hard for anyone from one of those posts to get back to the website and the forum and find out what's happening there. Should we just talk about the website and forum? The website, that organizational discussion. It's just.
Sorry, can I just say something about the organization?
Sure.
Yeah. So I've been involved in a few open source, free software projects, and there's a real tendency for them to have one maintainer. It's a kind of a stable situation where you have one maintainer, and they maintain a project until they burn out, and sometimes it's taken over by somebody else. So you have this sort of serial maintainer situation. Now FreeCAD isn't in that situation. Isn't in that place. FreeCAD's managed to break through to this next level of having more than one maintainer, and I think that one of the reasons for having some kind of organization is to try and break through to that next level. Yeah, that's just the point I was trying to make.
I mean, it'd be like some of the work. Sorry, Bruno, were you?
yeah, there's just it's Dion's like and having a real spurt of work, but it's not going to last. Yeah.
No. Eventually, you can't keep that up for years on end. Although it is part of his employment that he gets the opportunity to do that work, so it's so that's also really great. Yeah, because I was thinking like it'd be great if there's a project. I don't know what they call themselves, but there's the organization called OSGeo, which is open source geographical data and GIS software. I would definitely, I think if you just, I'll just put it in the chat. If you just look up OSGeo, something like that, you'll find their website. And they're really interesting because they're just an organizational body, but they maintain, for example, some documentation for some exchange formats, and they organize conferences, and they sponsor academic work, and they organize hackathons and all that kind of stuff, even though they themselves, they don't have a software project. They support a whole ecosystem of software projects by helping them talk to each other. So that was one of the places that that could be really interesting, and it might be like I've started reaching out to them to find out how they do it and why they do it, and maybe they'd like to give us a presentation at some stage, so they can tell us the opportunities that it creates and the headaches that it creates, because it's like Iona says, it's pretty early to be talking about this kind of stuff, but there is a lot of dissatisfaction out there in the software part of our work, and there's also quite a lot of money, and there's some innovators getting into the branch from other, like from gaming, for example, who look like they're willing to throw money at this area. Yeah.
But isn't what what I see is that if this is such a huge task for an organization that doesn't yet exist, and if development on Blender is almost single person, I don't know if it's more people, but at least there's one active developer that looks like is the most active. Isn't the scope of what you're saying too much? Because, or shouldn't the development be focused on Blender right now until it's usable product, not that it's a commercial product, but a usable product, and then based on that, the synergy with other projects might be done. But what I'm saying is that if there isn't a focus that people can cling to, maybe it will be difficult to even have the organization, because it's so wide right now, it's so open, and it's so unfocused that probably it loses. People can't relate. Well, I don't know if people are all the same, but for me, it's difficult to relate to exactly what Blender means right now, and exactly what is OSArch right now, and who is doing what, and who is developing, who is only looking at it as I am. So for me, it's all very confusing. I don't know where to start with. So
I think it's confusing for us as well, and we're in the middle of it.
Well, yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about.
Yes. So I don't know if maybe a clear roadmap or something like that on Blender and associate projects would help. So maybe the wiki should be what is working and what we are searching for, and who is doing what. So, and what connects with what, because that's what I really don't understand.
Yeah.
Can I butt in again, please, Duncan? It's Peter here again. Basically, as I see it, I've also not been part of this for a long time. I've been following it and trying to join in some discussions. From what I see, or from my experience also as being a BIM coordinator, etc., I would say this is, it's like an octopus. But I think the main goal of OSArch is basically like it's in the mission statement. Today's market is dominated by dinosaurs who do not have any wish to follow standards. I was also in a meeting with Dion where he was talking about the MVD or micro MVD that he's been working on.
Yeah.
And when you look at these approaches to opening up the standards, adhering to standards in the BIM market, that is something that many big players are interested in. It is not generally a one-to-one, this open source architecture, in that you would have many and hopefully many more initiatives when it comes to dedicated software for doing a specific task. But I think the overall goal is opening up, getting increased transparency and also adherence to standards. I'm not sure I explained this. This is talking off my head, but
yeah, for me that is clear. Interoperability between software is a must for our industry, because we must work together with a lot of different players, and it's very hard to do that with BIM. It was easier before when it was simpler with DWG and everybody was using it. But right now there's more formats and more, not many standards. But Blender BIM or OSArch are being based in a standard that is Open BIM, right? Or they're starting from that. And Open BIM is already an organization, so wouldn't it be wise to talk with them to see how to connect?
I don't believe that OpenBIM actually is an organization. It's an idea which has been promoted by some well-meaning companies. As far as I know, it's not an organization, is it?
Yeah, because in the end, IFC is one let's say, Open BIM standard. So I guess he was talking about building smart.
Yeah, building smart. Sorry.
Okay, you can be well assured that the people involved in many of these projects are doing everything they can to work together with Building Smart. But Building Smart has their agenda doesn't always match. So there is some cooperation and there is some friction. Can we talk about the website? Because it actually fits with quite a few of the things Joel was mentioning. I have read what you've been writing, Lucas and Cyril. There's some comments in the chat if you guys haven't read them, which I think are interesting. But could we talk a little bit about the structure of the website? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
So what I've written here, I'd like some feedback on, is mostly to do with whether, and it sounds like Joel might have an answer to this, but whether the website makes clear what we're trying to do and whether people can find what is relevant for them. So that's like the first question. And then behind that question, there's things like, do we want to have a website which includes discussions of why OpenBIM is important and open standards and all that stuff, and includes descriptions of lots of different software, and includes documentation for the projects that don't have their own documentation. And so like there's some quite different things, in my opinion. And at the moment they're all happening on the wiki, and how do we want to deal with that? Actually, those are the two things that I think were important. Can people find what they need, and how do we want to organize those different things? And just I had a good discussion with Jan, who's interested in the website, and we've been talking a bit back and forward. And the website at the moment, the wiki, what we've talked about is that's like the machine room, that's the library at the back of the building, that's where lots of information is stored. What we don't have, and what we do need, and we will get sometime, is the nice facade and the lobby, which has got all of the really cool looking stuff, and the simple texts, and the big buttons, where you can send people who are completely new to all of this, and they get a quick overview, and they can see, oh, so this is like the featured information for engineers, and this is the featured information for architects and stuff. So we need that as well. We don't have it. We don't have anyone with we don't have that at the moment, but that's also planned. So comments about how ugly the wiki are, I'm not so interested in them. I'm most interested in the discussion of how we make the wiki useful and being able to find the things that are needed, if that makes sense. So what have people used the wiki for, and have you been able to find what you've needed?
On some topic, yes. Currently, there is a big list of softwares. I think we need to develop, as Blender BIM is developed, we need to develop workflows to show how to use them, because there is many software and no example to show how to use it.
Yep, anyone who finds a workflow, let me know.
To integrate each other.
Yep. But seriously, anyone who finds a workflow, let me know. I'm trying to, don't let me know, go in yourself and add it. Because I've been a bit surprised that it's been as hard as it is to find the workflows. There will be a couple of projects coming in Blender BIM, like you were talking about before, global something, I don't remember what your real name is. So there's some projects on the way in Blender BIM, and there's some FreeCAD projects, but yeah, workflows.
Can I make a question? Let's say, because we are asking now how, let's say, we use a software, but let's say that because, for example, I don't know, even for Blender BIM, there are some YouTube videos, let's say, that show specific things, or for Codaster, let's say me and also my business partner, we are doing, let's say, some tutorials, how to use, let's say, so how to do specific things. So how do we see, let's say, for example, a YouTube video? Is it a valid content to show a workflow, or what do we think it's the best, let's say, content to show a workflow? Because that's a question, let's say, important, I think.
Actually, I'd like to, the way that I'd like to answer that question, for my opinion, is that any project that's making documentation should do it however it works for them. And I don't think we should get involved in that. So like I've tried very much for all of the software pages that I've put up on the wiki to just link to that project's own documentation. Because if we start listing, go and have a look at these 3 YouTube videos, that list will never be finished. So far I've really been trying to say, you know what, the different projects have got their own documentation, and we should absolutely not try and have our own structure to it and our own overlapping documentation. So far, that's what I've been doing. I haven't got time to do anything different.
Yeah, but let's say that the documentation is something more general, let's say. So because also Codastray has a documentation, but in order to do something, it's quite, let's say, difficult then to actually do it. So, I mean, I don't know, I see video tutorials, something that, let's say, is an extra, is something that is maybe easier to follow. But yeah, I mean, I agree to link directly to the documentation of a project, but I was just wondering, for example, YouTube tutorials, if they have a place on somewhere on that part, let's say.
I was more talking about workflows concerning our work, not a software.
Okay.
Currently, I know how to make my work with other software, and I need to develop one with open source softwares. And so there are some pieces I know, but I need to fill the gap to have a complete workflow with open source softwares.
For instance, is it possible to create? Imagine that I import a building for Blender Bin. Is it possible to document it from Blender Bin?
Well, that's a specific question for some specific software, and at the moment it's quite difficult. But Dion is working on it. But in terms of the structure of the website, that also raises the question of when you go into the website and, for example, you have a specific tool in your software chain that you want to switch out or you want to look at alternatives. How do you find that tool? And then the other thing, like was just said, if you need to solve a specific thing like documentation, we don't actually have a point on our list called documentation. Should we have one? But I think a lot of these questions will hopefully be answered once we start getting some workflows. Because what I'm hoping we'll be doing with the workflows is you can have a line on the page that just scrolls down, and you can just say, well, we use these tools for getting our sketch proposal together, and then we use these tools to start up our model, and we use these add-ins to the tools to do these things, and then we exported it using this format, and we moved over to this tool, and so on and so on. I imagine that's going to solve a lot of those questions. I just haven't been able to find a project yet, but there are some projects being done that will be able to fill those gaps.
And do you think many architects will change their software for a collection of tools that might develop or not, and eventually don't fill all the gaps or fill all the gaps, but with a lot of trouble? Because I don't know if I would be willing to do that. You know, I have a tool, it has its limitations, but it fulfills all of what I need to do.
If I can give an answer to this, Blender is already used by many architects for rendering, and Dion started to work on Blender because he was already doing his rendering, and he thought it was very stupid to have all the building modeled without using it for BIM. Correct me, others, if you don't understand what I say.
I fully agree with that. So for me, the mantra would be that a model would serve every purpose, not having to create a specific model for rendering. is what I do right now. So I'm not into Beam right now. I want to be prepared for when I need it. But right now, I do everything else. So stepping into Beam is too soon, not needed, and too confusing right now. So I see that I lose out the capabilities of doing everything else that I really need if I start trying to do stuff that I still don't need. But ideally, a model should serve all purposes and be. So that was why I got interested in Blender Beam, because Blender is much more than Beam Modeler. It has a lot of things that are very interesting.
I think maybe the discussion forum is a great place to continue that discussion. But to talk about the website, which is what I'd like to.
Sorry.
But I mean, again, all of these discussions, it would be really great if we find a good way of answering them in the text of the website. But I think you may not have seen the long version of the mission statement because it's not very visible at the moment. But if you search on the discussion forum after mission statement, you'll find a thread. Yeah, I think I started it. So it started by Duncan. And if you go through, you'll see like how what the text looks like and the things we've suggested. And that helps give a better picture of what we're trying to do. Because one tool that can do everything, that's definitely not what we're trying to do. And that's sort of articulated a bit more in the text there.
But so are you thinking on a platform to connect every tool, or the platform is like the computer of anyone?
I think we'll keep that discussion on the discussion forum.
Okay.
Or when we finish talking about the website, we can get back to that.
Yeah, but
because that's a really big discussion and that's interesting. But
don't you think that the structure of the website has to do with the structure of what you're saying right now? So if your objective if your aim is to have a tool to aggregate all tools, then the website is about a tool. If the website is about a workflow to aggregate all tools, it's a different thing. So
what we talked about last time, we talked about what we want the website to be is about workflows. We want the entry to the website to be about workflows. So in the line of, what are you trying to solve? Here are some examples for how you can solve it. Here are the main tools that work quite well. Here are some links to some other tools you might be interested in that also fulfill some niches. And like from there, getting into the details of it. That's the way that we've previously talked about structuring the website. So very much like you say, based on workflows, so that when an architect goes in, they can see, okay, I'm an architect, I have these things that I need to solve, and here's some suggestions of tools and some examples of projects. And I tried to do that to start with. We just don't have those examples.
Okay, and honestly, that's not what I understand when I look at the website. When I look at the website, I see a website for one software, which is Blender Beam. So maybe the website should be...
Are you going to the OSArch website, though?
No, you were talking about the OSArch website. I was talking about the Blender Beam.
Well, the Blender Beam website's about Blender Beam. The OSArch website's about OSArch.
So very, very sorry. I thought I'm confusing everything.
Yeah.
And okay.
Because but interestingly though, Dion has started using, just to make things even more confusing, Dion has started using the OSArch website for a lot of his Blender Beam documentation. And that's another thing I've been trying to work out, how we want to make it visible for people that this is documentation for a specific project, and this is about a workflow, and this is about a list of software and stuff, but it's sort of not something that wikis make very easy.
But the website is OSArch.org.
Yeah, yep. And then there's two sections there, and if you click into the wiki, you'll see the part that I'm talking about.
Great.
I should have been more specific at the beginning, perhaps, about what that was.
Probably it's my problem.
And what I've been trying to do so far, it's I've been sort of working a lot on the structure, and some people have been working on different subjects in the website. So what I've been trying to focus on is making the website, what do you want to call it, flexible, I suppose. So I've started building up pages for I've started building up pages for the software that's in our list, so that you just have a little list of who develops it and where you can read their documentation and stuff like that. And where I suggest we go from there is we have an info box for software, like you can see on Wikipedia. So you have a standard format of information for each software. If you look in the Blender BIM section of the OSArch.org website, Dion has made an example of an info box. And the other thing I've been trying to do is work with categories. And I'd really like to hear people's feedback when they're going around the website. Like, what are we missing? Some categories? Is categories a way that works? The reason I've focused a lot on categories is if we don't have categories, then we need to have manually written indexes, and who's going to maintain them? So I've instead gone through and taken all of the things that are about the same subject, added them to a category, and then started adding a banner at the top of those pages saying, this page is about this topic. There are lots of other pages. Click here for a list of all the other pages, and trying to deal with it that way.
Those categories cannot they be automatic? Like from the whole topics we have in the opening page, we have discussions about 1,000 and 10,000 different things, and some I don't know, some filtering, some automatic category making tool.
Are you talking about the discussions or the wiki?
The discussions.
Yeah, I have no. I'm not talking about the discussions. I'm talking about the wiki.
I think that the first thing that we feel about the wiki is that the idea that this is a workflow with different software isn't clear from the start. The wiki, maybe that should be the start. The main purpose of OSArch being developing or showing a workflow that uses several open source software for several parts of the whole process of designing a building.
Yep.
And this statement isn't clear on the wiki, so and
you're correct. You're totally correct that it's not clear on the wiki, but that's because I haven't found a good workflow yet.
But maybe the purpose is the workflow. So if we are clear about the purpose, maybe people can contribute more on the workflow, or this can be developed. Maybe the structure of the wiki should be clear on the purpose of OSArch, and then grow. But right now it feels a bit random.
Yeah, the only workflow I found at the moment is where everything was solved inside FreeCAD, and the danger of using that is it makes the OSArch wiki a feature story about FreeCAD. But if that's what we've got now, maybe that's what we should bring forward. But if you look at the banner across the top of the front page of the wiki, you can see I've sort of tried to pick out some examples. Yeah. But yeah, I'll have another think about how I can make the workflow more obvious. Just at the moment, the workflow doesn't really, because of course, we want a workflow where you have something about how do you do sketch models for design development.
Yeah.
How do you make a presentation folder or a competition folder to present a project? How do you then start doing a costing? How do you then start doing detailed models? How do you do documentation from that? How do you do follow-up of issues? All of those things, but they just don't exist like in a chain. So I think it would be kind of a bit false to just choose some tools and say, well, you could use this and then you could use this. I mean, I could do that, but I don't think that it'd be, yeah.
But what about thinking on the stages of an architectural process? Like the first stage being maybe conceptual projects or mass studies or whatever, or physical models, or I don't know. Starting for what software is fit for each stage, even if they don't connect with each other right now, but they are willing to connect in the future.
Yeah, I think you're going to enjoy looking around on the website because there's a lot of stuff there. So like if you look at the software list, it's actually listed up similar to what you're talking about there. If you look at the AEC software list.
Yeah, but it's not connected with the specific stage of the process, of the architectural process. Because if we talk about Revit, which is being sold as a full scope software, you know that you'll be able to create your mass concepts there. You then be able to evolve, and you keep growing, and the software will keep responding. That's not the purpose of OSArch. OSArch is different. Is at this stage you should think on these or these, and then you might find answers on this software, and this software. Even if they don't talk with each other, maybe that's where we should start. No.
Have a look through the software list, and like I've got it here, and it starts with schematic design, and then there's a section for project management and facility management. So
where do I find that?
Yeah.
Resources, no. ISC resource directories, no.
Under the main heading there, overview of open source AEC software. Oh, sorry, that's a different version of the front page. At the moment, there's a list there on the front page of AEC resources, and it's got the AEC free software directory. I might as well go through these because I can tell you what we're thinking with them. The AECO free software directory, and there's open data standards, and I've been collecting some of the exchange formats and the ways of organizing data so that we know what they are. And the next one, which is just called open data, that's like if you need some data sets for doing tests and stuff. Standards organizations is just what it sounds like. There's more standards organizations out there than I realized. Yeah, and then some media stories and some featured images. So that's sort of like trying to grow a list of resources. Whether that's the best way of organizing resources, I don't know. But maybe we'll leave that there if people want to spend a bit more time on the wiki looking around. And you can look at it from the viewpoint of someone who doesn't know the project, and then look at it the viewpoint from someone who wants some specific information. And there's a thread on the website which is just called website. Sorry, there's a thread in the discussion forum which is just called website design. And if you drop something on there, I'll be very happy to read it. And if the thing that needs changing is obvious, then just make an account and go in and change it. I think on Wikipedia they say be bold, right?
Well, I hope I didn't disturb you in any way, but for me, it's I'm just trying to pick up on things and try to build in my mind the idea of what is this. So for me, this kind of list is what I was expecting to see after your description of a workflow. Now the thing is that this is a list, but things don't connect with each other, and you don't know if using each one of these tools will allow you to achieve a full project from end to start.
Yeah, I know that I wouldn't do a commercial project in it, and I know that Ryan from Opening Design, he uses a mixture of software, and Dion has also said to me that he wouldn't advise anyone to try and switch all of their workflow over to open source software at the moment. The maturity is just not there.
Yeah.
But as you look through the website, and also as you look through the website with fresh eyes, do please you'll write a reply on the website design topic, telling me or just discussing with it how it works when you're just landing on it and trying to understand what's going on. Because you know how it is, if you're the person working at a website, it doesn't seem as confusing as it does when you've just started looking.
Yeah.
So that confusion is really useful for me to try and fix.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that.
All right.
Go ahead, Anne.
No, sorry. I was just Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as far as getting some feedback on the wiki goes, it sounds like, and I was wondering this before, it sounds like we might want to just have a period where people just look at it and use it and try and be that new person that just got a link to the website, looking around and trying to see if they can find things that make sense. Because I've tried to organize things in a way that I think makes sense, but that's kind of why I'm asking now, because I need to get a bit of feedback, because some of the decisions that are being made and the way the wiki is structured are going to stick with us for a while. So that's why it would be really good. Yeah. So if you haven't looked at the wiki website very much, please go in and spend 10 minutes looking around, see if you're finding the things that you need, and see if it's helping you find things that you didn't know were interesting. And it was about an hour and a half. I don't know if I'd be quite interested to go back to the discussion about different types of software, but that if do other people have sort of things that could be called agenda points, or do we want to round up for tonight and people can talk informally? I'm going to suggest we might be finished for today.
Yeah, I feel that hitting the 1 hour and a half, I think, let's say we are good to keep it to that limit, I would say.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Okay, so I guess then we can continue in the forums, the discussions about the website, the intentions, and the organization. And then maybe next month we can see, let's say, what new has been done, what are the new opinions and stuff.
Yeah. And I can't remember who said it, but I think maybe it was you. I think it's a good point as well, like what sort of things are suitable for discussing in these monthly meetups and what sort of things are good on the forum. I think personally that these monthly meetups are good for lots of things, but what they might be best for is just people hearing about the project and dropping in and seeing a good presentation and a quick introduction to what OSArch is trying to do. And a lot of the discussions, I think you were saying that, Owen, there's a lot of the discussions work really well on the forum. That's something I'd certainly like to look at, is how we can make these monthly things into something with a really good, strong presentation of something at the start. And then if people want to stay and talk, well, that's just great.
I think this is a good point, because in the end, let's say, okay, we need some time to discuss, but also maybe this is also the time, let's say, to have some visual, to show something. And I think it is positive, let's say, to think that maybe who is interested can, let's say, have these 10 minutes to do an update. For example, I don't know, I can have always an update of 5 minutes on IFC to Codaster from month to month. Yeah, that could be an idea. Or Bruno is doing always interesting stuff. He could have his 5 minutes to update on something. And Cyril and you and Dion, maybe this would be, let's say, also a good way
Yeah.
Although also the keyword the keynote presentation is also a good, let's say, thing when we have it. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's talk about that in the forum as we get close to the next one, and do a bit of work on having a good agenda structure, and also an agenda structure that we can, those of us who are active in social media, that we can share it, and maybe there's somebody's name and there's a graphic and all that kind of stuff. Because I think in many ways these short videos where you get to see something visual, like you're saying, it's a great introduction to what can be done. I mean, just the picture we've got on the screen there, you can't help but think, oh, that's cool.
Oh yes. It's a good idea, I think, also to, let's say, you mean create then small pieces of material, let's say, from a meeting that then we can show, post and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, I was thinking of creating things before the meeting.
Okay.
Like having the agenda ready a week before, because then you can write. So this person is going to present this topic for half an hour, and then we'll have 10 minutes about what's happening in engineering software, and 10 minutes about what's happening on the documentation front, and 10 minutes about what's happening with us as an organization. Something like that, you know?
Yeah. But even after, then it can also be used, let's say, as a marketing content. I mean.
Yeah. Because at the moment we're not really pushing these meetups very much. But if we work on making sure they've got reliable and interesting content, then that would be something worth pushing. We've had some really good presentations. I wasn't at them all, but I've watched them all. Hey, well, it's going to be tomorrow in 20 minutes where I am, so I'm pretty much done for today.
Sounds great.
I notice you'll put a link up to the video, yeah?
A link, yes. I will certainly put it. Yes.
Cool. And I'll try and make a discussion post about some of the things we've talked about for the website, so that we can find that again in the future.
All right.
Anybody got anything they need to say before we finish? Nice to have you here, and good to. I think we had 2 new people. I think there were 2 names I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, it's my first time.
Yeah, I'll try to join these regularly as well. It's very interesting.
More than 2, I think. I think we have
I think so.
maybe 4 or 5.
Cool. Yeah. Well, join us on the discussion groups, and let us know what's interesting, and suggest presentations you want to see as well. A quick half-an-hour presentation, most people are pretty happy to quickly do that. It doesn't require much preparation. Have a great day or a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, good night.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Good work.
Bye.
Bye.